reading. The House now comes to questions for oral answer, and the first question stands in the name of the Honourable Leader of the Opposition. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, my question is to the Prime Minister. Does he stand by all his statements as Prime Minister? If so, why?
The Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, yes, because I do.
The Honourable Phil Goff.
Mr.
Speaker.
Let's test that. Mr. Speaker.
Order. I've called the Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, does he stand by his statement to Tūhoe negotiators that handing over ownership of the Ureweras to the tribe was, quote, complex but workable, which the negotiators are adamant that he said to them in his office in March?
The Honourable Prime Minister.
Speaker, no, because I have no recollection of saying it.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
No recollection.
Not sure whether no recollection is no or not.
Order.
Supplementary question, Mr. Speaker. Was the handover of the ownership of the Ureweras the preferred option for settling the treaty negotiations that was passed by the Treaty Cabinet Committee that he chaired himself? If not, what was the preferred option?
The Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, no.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, when...
Order.
Mr. Speaker, when they're finished braying, I'll answer my question.
Order. The noise was, the Honourable Leader of the Opposition shouldn't say that, but then the interjections were a little unnecessary. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, when did Tariana Turia indicate to him that she was, in his words, totally fine about his decision on the Tūhoe negotiations?
The Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, when I had a discussion with Tariana Turia on the Sunday night and gave her the decision that we had taken in relation to Tūhoe, she was respectful in the conversation she had. She made it absolutely clear that she wasn't happy with the decision. But unlike the Leader of the Opposition, when you have a conversation with Tariana Turia, you don't think there's about to be a cardiac arrest that follows it.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker.
Order. Order. The Honourable
Deeper.
Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, does he stand by his statement last month on Radio New Zealand that, quote, the 20 free hours early education policy won't be changed, end quote, and his earlier pledge that National would enhance 20 hours early childhood education and keep existing subsidies?
The Honourable Prime Minister.
Yes and yes, and I can't wait for it all to be unveiled in the budget on Thursday.
The Honourable Jim Anderson.
Speaker, does the Prime Minister...
Order.
Right.
Order.
I'd like to see what city you...
Order. The House will... Order. The member will resume his seat. Now, look, I say to government backbenchers on this occasion, the Honourable Jim Anderson hadn't uttered a word. And interjections were unreasonable at that point. The Honourable Jim Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Does the Prime Minister recall saying in a radio interview yesterday that he didn't agree with the proposal from the Cabinet Treaty Negotiations Committee, which he chairs, to gift the Ureweras National Park to Tūhoe iwi? And if so, did he approve the item going on the Cabinet agenda and then, without any further consultation with Treaty Committee members, remove it from the Cabinet agenda and unilaterally decide to cancel that recommendation, again without consultation? And if so, how would he describe that process for balanced and informed Cabinet decision-making?
The Honourable Prime Minister.
In answer to those 4 questions, yes, no, 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 and if he's going to do better in Christchurch, he's going to have to explain a bit more simply to the people of Christchurch.
Materia Ture. Order. Now look, order. I apologise, the Honourable Member. If she wouldn't. Now look, I say to both sides of the House, the issue I understand will arouse, passion. I'm not troubled by that, but just a little respect to the member I've called Materia Ture.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Does the Prime Minister stand by his statement reported today that New Zealanders shouldn't be envious that his tax cuts will deliver much more to the rich than to those who are struggling? And doesn't he think it is grossly insulting to make an accusation that people are guilty of envy because they care for a fair society and reducing inequality?
The Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr Speaker, absolutely I stand by that statement, and I just would want to point out a reasonably simple but interesting fact that I think is worthy of being in this debate. The top 10% of income earners pay 44% of all personal income tax in New Zealand, but interestingly enough, if working for families, benefits, etc. and other are taken into account, the 10% of taxpayers in New Zealand who are the top earners actually pay 76% of all net personal tax in New Zealand.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Speaker, does he stand by his promise, and I quote, National will not be increasing GST?
The Honourable Prime Minister.
Yes, I do, in relation to the question I was asked at the time.
Materia Today. Order. 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 I'm on my feet and there won't be interjections anywhere. Materia Today, supplementary question.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Does the Prime Minister understand that the top 10% of income earners pay only 4% of their income in GST, whereas the lowest 10% pay 14% of their income in GST, making the increase in GST hitting the poorest people the hardest? And if so, why does he not then look at implementing the measures released yesterday by the Green Party in the Mind the Gap package, which are directly focused on reducing the inequality that is New Zealand's most significant social and economic problem?
The Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr Speaker, I'm not sure I can agree with the numbers that the member put forward, but what I can say is simply this, is the advice from Treasury is that the progressivity nature of GST is about the same as the personal tax system. In other words, those who earn more pay more, and simple facts of life are those who earn more income consume a lot more and therefore nominally pay the same amount and pay more GST.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr Speaker, in light of broken promises to Tūhoe and to the public on things like GST, does he stand by this statement of his, quote, one sure way of only being a one-term government is by breaking your word, and I have no intention of breaking my word.
The Honourable Prime Minister.
Actually, Mr Speaker, I like those words. They sounded better out of my mouth than the Leader of the Opposition, but they're absolutely right.
Order.
But in relation to the question that the Leader of the Opposition asked me, let me just have this quote from National Radio, which was, and I quote from Sean Plunkett's question, to Tamati Kruger, had the Prime Minister said anything or had his office indicated anything to you that you had got through that process? And the answer from Tamati Kruger was no. You see, Mr Speaker, on this side of the House, we know our positions. Over there, after 30 minutes on Q&A, I didn't have a clue what his position was on anything.
Question number 2, Craig Foss. Order. Order. Point of order, the Honourable David Cumming.
Mr Speaker, I seek leave to save the House's time by tabling the questions and answers, supplementary questions and answers to question 2.
Order. Order. The member can seek leave for all sorts of courses of actions, but I'm not sure how that one is possible. But
Speaker, I've been gifted the questions and the Minister's answers in advance, and
the members
been
made
very
it clear.
helpful, Mr Speaker.
Order.
And
Order. Order.
Mr Speaker, I
Order.
can
I'm on my
certainly
feet.
save the House time.
Order. I'm say to the Honourable Dr. Nick Smith, when the Speaker's on his feet, there will be no further interjection. The House has been very unruly. Now, a member has sought leave to table certain documents. Is there any objection to that course of action? There is no objection. Question number 2. The table down there. Order. Point of order, the Honourable Jerry Brown.
Mr. Speaker, leave it as granted. The House may be